Sure, an engineer. Late at night in a sleek glass-walled office in Palo Alto. He's staring at a complex algorithm on his screen, stuck on a persistent bug that's holding back a major project. He's been fueled by expensive pour-over coffee for hours trying to crack it. Now, imagine another engineer, 6,000 miles away. She's in a bustling, futuristic tech hub humming with innovation in Shenzhen. She's looking at a remarkably similar string of code facing the exact same roadblock. Her desk is littered with empty teacups. Both are brilliant, both are exhausted, and both are at the absolute cutting edge of their field. Then, a notification dings on both of their computers almost simultaneously. A new research paper, published by a team at a university in Germany, has just gone live on an open-access server. They both download it. Inside is a novel theoretical model that offers a solution, a key that unlocks the problem they've both been wrestling with. Within a week, both of their companies have integrated a new approach, filing patents for their unique applications. So here's the question that seems to define our era. Did the engineer in Shenzhen steal that idea from Silicon Valley? Or is what we just witnessed simply, well, how science works now?
That scenario perfectly sets the stage for our deep dive today. It really does. We're going to try and unravel the intricate story of global technological competition, moving beyond the headlines and, frankly, the often simplistic narratives. We'll start by examining the historical and contemporary impact of universal scientific principles, how they influence cross-border innovation and technological development. And, importantly, challenging those nationalistic claims of ownership in what is fundamentally a globally interconnected research landscape.
Absolutely. And as we peel back those layers, we'll also investigate the strategic shift and the significant financial commitment behind China's indigenous innovation and critical technology sectors. This means moving beyond those historical narratives of imitation and focusing squarely on the original breakthroughs happening there today.
And finally, we'll explore how a sometimes intellectually, perhaps, lazy narrative of technological theft influences international relations. We'll look at how it might obscure the true nature of the global competition for innovation leadership, focusing instead on the underlying systemic advantages that truly drive progress, rather than, fixating on singular breakthroughs or isolated incidents. It's a fascinating, complex picture, one where the lines are often blurred, and we're here to help you make sense of it all.
Okay, so let's start there. When we talk about China's remarkable technological rise, you'll often hear a very specific narrative, right? You hear it from politicians, maybe you see it in certain news reports. It typically suggests that China's advancements are built on three main pillars. First, they studied and learned extensively from the U.S. Second, they stole technology. And only then did they improve upon it. This narrative can even go so far as to imply that Chinese students are learning what are essentially American scientific principles, which sounds a bit odd when you say it out loud.
It does sound odd, doesn't it? And what's fascinating here is just how dismissive and, frankly, misinformed that narrative can be. It's akin to claiming that when a Chinese physicist studies Newton's laws of motion, they're somehow learning American science.
Right.
Or that advancements in civil engineering, like building incredibly complex skyscrapers or massive dams, are simply a result of stealing American blueprints.
Mm-hmm.
The fundamental principles of physics, mathematics, chemistry, engineering, these are universal. Mm-hmm. They are not owned by any single country or culture. These are the very same principles that allowed the ancient Romans to build their aqueducts, or the Chinese to construct the Great Wall thousands of years ago. They are a shared human heritage built upon by scholars and innovators across millennia and continents.
I understand the point about universal principles, but let's unpack this a bit further in a modern context, like maybe push back a little. It feels like machine learning, for instance. A significant amount of foundational research, especially in the early days, did originate in U.S. universities and leading tech giants. That's fair to say, right?
Sure, a lot of the early work, yes.
But the algorithms, the theoretical models, the research papers, they're often published openly, sometimes even as open source code. So if a scientist in Beijing, or for that matter in Berlin or Buenos Aires, reads those same papers and builds upon those theories, are they stealing in that context? Or is that simply how modern science advances? Is it just participation?
Precisely. They are participating in a global scientific community, following the very tenets of scientific progress. Building on what came before, the deeper you dig into how fundamental science and engineering principles transcend national borders, the more this simplistic copying homework narrative just falls apart.
Yeah.
This dismissive view, which often suggests that any success from China or other developing nations must be due to theft or mere copying, completely misses the mark. It's intellectually lazy, really. It ignores the fact that scientific discovery has always been a cumulative cross-cultural endeavor. Think about the rich scientific heritage that flowed from ancient Greece to the Islamic Golden Age, which then laid crucial groundwork for the European Renaissance. Knowledge moves.
Right, it builds.
Exactly. Today, with open access journals, global conferences, and instant digital communication, scientific knowledge is more universally available than ever before. When a researcher anywhere in the world accesses a published paper or open source code, they are engaging in the very essence of scientific advancement, building upon existing knowledge to create new solutions. This isn't theft. It's the fundamental engine of progress in a globally connected world. To suggest otherwise is to fundamentally misunderstand how modern science operates and, frankly, to undermine the collaborative spirit that has driven human progress for centuries.
That leads perfectly to another critical point, one that often gets overlooked in that dominant narrative we were just talking about. It's the idea that China is simply improving on U.S. technology. This completely ignores the truly massive internal investment and, more importantly, the original research and breakthroughs now happening within China itself.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting, and where the human element of this shift becomes so clear. It's not just about numbers and policies. Let me tell you about Zhang Jin. This is a great example. He's a young engineer in Shenzhen. Just 10 or 15 years ago, his job, like many others in burgeoning Chinese tech companies, was in what you might call an imitation department.
Okay, reverse engineering, basically.
Exactly. It focused primarily on reverse engineering foreign electronics and making them cheaper. That was the game then. But fast forward to today. Zhang Jin now leads a dedicated team at a major electric vehicle company. A team operating with a research and development budget that was simply unthinkable a decade ago. Huge sums.
Right.
Their sole mission is not to copy, but to create something new, something original. They're working on a battery cooling system, something no one else has done. And when they finally had a breakthrough, developing a novel alloy that dissipated heat 5% more efficiently, which is a big deal in battery tech.
Yeah, absolutely.
His team members, many of them in their mid-20s, were actually crying with joy. For Zhang Jun, it wasn't about copying. It was about being an inventor, a pioneer, contributing something truly new to the world. That's a massive shift in mindset.
That story really challenges the old narrative directly, doesn't it?
It really does. It reflects a nation that is pouring truly monumental amounts of capital into R&D. We're talking serious money, and inspiring a new generation to create something original, something that comes from their own ingenuity. In 2024 alone, China's total R&D spending reached an estimated $650 billion US.
650 billion.
Yeah, and that number's still growing at a remarkable pace.
Yeah.
To put that in perspective, this isn't just a minor increase, it's a monumental financial commitment. It signals a national priority that puts them right in the top tier globally.
So it's a strategic choice.
Absolutely. This investment is fueling a strategic shift from that imitation department mindset to one driven by genuine indigenous innovation. We're talking about a nation that is now filing more patents than anyone else globally, and these aren't just incremental improvements.
Right, not just tweaks.
No, these are often original breakthroughs across a range of critical fields. In 5G, for example, China has demonstrated clear leadership, not just in deploying vast networks, but in pioneering new network architectures and applications.
Okay.
In artificial intelligence, Chinese companies and research institutions are developing cutting-edge algorithms and applications, advanced natural language processing, intelligent manufacturing, often leading in real-world implementation and at scale, partly because they can leverage their vast data resources.
And green energy, too.
Definitely. They are innovating in areas like advanced solar panel efficiency, developing next-generation electric vehicle battery technologies that extend range and reduce charging times, and building massive integrated renewable energy projects. They're not just assembling parts, they are inventing core components and systems.
Okay.
So when a company in Shenzhen develops a new battery that lasts longer and charges faster, is that just an improvement on a US model? Or is it a brand new invention born from their own genius and billions of dollars of focused investment?
Yeah, the evidence seems to point pretty strongly towards invention now.
Increasingly, yes.
Yeah.
The evidence points to a robust, self-driven innovation ecosystem that stands on its own merits and is truly pushing the boundaries of technology.
Okay, but we absolutely cannot ignore the very real, personal stories that often fuel that technological theft narrative we started with. Stories that resonate deeply and create a strong emotional hook. I remember reading about David Miller from Ohio. He ran a small family-owned manufacturing business. He designed and patented a specialized hydraulic valve, a niche but critical component. put his heart and soul into it, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, he discovered a nearly identical valve being sold by a company in Guangzhou for 40% less.
Ouch.
Yeah. He lost clients, couldn't afford the protracted legal battles, and ultimately had to shut down his factory, laying off 30 longtime employees. For David, his American dream felt stolen, plain and simple. His pain, his sense of injustice is completely valid, right? It's a tangible part of this larger global picture.
David's loss is absolutely devastating, and his pain is a very real consequence within this larger global picture. There's no denying that. It's easy and, frankly, emotional compelling to focus solely on these individual cases of alleged theft. And yes, let's be clear, intellectual property theft certainly does occur, and it is a serious issue that needs addressing.
Sure.
But if we truly want to understand why these situations are happening, why a company in Guangzhou can potentially undercut a U.S. manufacturer by such a significant margin, we need to pull back and look at the systemic forces at play. These forces extend far beyond individual bad actors.
Okay.
The narrative of individual theft, while emotionally resonant, can sometimes distract from the deeper structural shifts occurring in the global economy and how innovation leadership is actually achieved. It allows us to simplify incredibly complex economic challenges into a clear-cut story of good versus evil, which might feel satisfying but doesn't really help us understand the underlying dynamics.
So you're saying the real competition isn't just about a stolen patent here or there.
Exactly. It's fundamentally about systemic advantages. Think about China's massive state subsidies, which provide an immense competitive advantage. These aren't just one-off payments. They often involve long-term financial backing, preferential loans, tax breaks that allow companies to invest heavily in R&D and manufacturing with a significantly reduced financial burden compared to their international counterparts.
Right, it lowers their risk profile.
Hugely. They can take bigger risks, invest for the long haul without immediate profit pressures, and even undercut competitors on price as they scale up. Then, consider its vertically integrated supply chains a truly distinct advantage. Imagine the speed at which a Chinese company can innovate and iterate on a new product if they control almost every stage of production, from raw materials to final assembly, often within close geographic proximity.
Much faster cycle times.
Drastically shorter development cycles, significantly reduced costs, and it can make them incredibly resilient to global disruptions. That's a systemic advantage. Western economies, with their more fragmented global supply chains, often struggle to match. And finally, there's its fiercely competitive domestic market. This vast market acts as a crucible, right? Companies battle fiercely for market share among hundreds of millions of consumers. This intense internal competition forces them to innovate rapidly, scale at a speed unimaginable in many Western markets.
Get battle-tested at home first.
Precisely. They constantly refine their products and processes. This internal pressure, coupled with strategic state support, means Chinese companies can quickly achieve economies of scale and product maturity before even entering international markets. David's story, while tragic, is a painful symptom of a much larger global shift. We fail to understand it if we reduce it to a simple story of cops and robbers. The real conflict isn't just about who has the best tech, it's about who has the best system for fostering innovation, who can adapt fastest, and who is willing to make the biggest long-term investments in areas deemed strategically vital.
The system itself.
Understanding that systemic approach is crucial for any real assessment of the global innovation landscape. China is playing a different game in many ways. #, China's strategic financial commitment to indigenous innovation.
That's a powerful point about systemic advantages, and it brings us to a specific sector where this competition is truly intense, semiconductors. So what does this all mean for understanding China's strategic approach, especially in such a critical industry? How are they building that system?
Well, China views the semiconductor industry as absolutely foundational. Not just for economic growth, but as an issue intrinsically linked to national security and strategic autonomy. They see it as vital. Since the mid-2010s, maybe around 2014, 2015, the Xi Jinping administration has embarked on an unprecedented heavy investment drive to increase self-sufficiency in this sector.
So it became a top priority.
A massive national priority. This isn't just a general goal. It was codified in official policy. The outline of the Program for National Integrated Circuit Industry Development, issued by the State Council back in June 2014, explicitly declared the IC industry as the very core of the IT sector. It highlighted its strategic, fundamental, and leading role in economic, social, and national security development.
They put it in writing.
Clearly articulated that strong dependence on imported ICs posed a significant and unacceptable risk to the nation's industrial competitiveness and, crucially, to its information security. It set a clear, long-term objective: build indigenous capacity.
And how did they go about doing that? What were the measures?
They put in place comprehensive and multi-layered measures, really systematic. These included establishing the leading group for national integrated circuit industry development. Think of it as a central command post to coordinate everything.
Okay, centralized direction.
Exactly. Ensuring that all efforts are aligned under a single strategic vision. They also created the National Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, famously known as the Big Fund.
Ah, yes, the Big Fund. Heard of that?
It's a massive, state-backed investment vehicle specifically designed to inject capital into key semiconductor enterprises. Billions and billions. This was complemented by actively supporting similar, though smaller, funds by local governments to pool even more capital. Furthermore, they strengthened direct financial support across the industry and steadily implemented a range of aggressive tax incentives,
making it very attractive financially.
Incredibly attractive for companies to invest and innovate in the semiconductor space. This strategic drive was further amplified by Made in China 2025 in May 2015 and its technology roadmap later that year. These set incredibly ambitious targets for self-sufficiency rates in ICs, aiming to raise the rate from about 41% in 2015.
Which is already quite high.
Well, high dependence still, but they aimed for 49% by 2020 and a staggering 75% by 2030. A later roadmap in 2018 even pushed the 2030 target to an even more audacious 80%.
80% self-sufficiency, that's huge.
It's aiming for dominance and, most importantly, strategic independence.
And what were the results? Did this orchestrated effort pay off?
The results are tangible and, frankly, quite remarkable. China's semiconductor production capacity has expanded at an astonishing rate, growing from just under 10%, about 9.7% of the world's total in 2015, to over 15%, 15.3% by the end of 2020.
So they overtook the U.S. in capacity.
In overall production capacity within that 5-year span, yes. And now closing in on Japan. Beyond just raw production capacity, the improvement in Chinese companies' design capabilities has been significant. For instance, Huawei's silicon, their fabless chip design arm, they design chips but don't make them,
right,
demonstrated 5-nanometer design capabilities. That's incredibly advanced miniaturization. At one point, HiSilicon even ranked among the world's top 10 companies in terms of net sales for chip design. And in the outsourced semiconductor assembly and test sector, the packaging Part 3 Chinese companies were among the top 10 globally in late 2020.
So across-the-board progress.
A comprehensive push across the entire value chain, not just in one isolated area.
Let's talk about the money again. Can you give us a sense of the sheer scale of the financial commitment? You mentioned subsidies earlier.
Yeah, the volume of government subsidies flowing to semiconductor-related A-share-listed companies, those traded on China's mainland stock exchanges, increased dramatically. From about 2.65 billion RMB in 2015, roughly $400 million US dollars then, it surged to 11.65 billion RMB by 2020. That's a 4.4-fold increase.
Huge jump.
And by late 2021, these subsidies were already significant for that year too, increasing their overall share of subsidies across all listed companies. China's largest chip foundry, SMIC, was a primary beneficiary. They received almost 2.5 billion RMB in 2020 alone.
So over 20% of the total semiconductor subsidies went to SMIC.
Exactly, which clearly underscores its immense strategic importance to the government. Beyond direct subsidies, many of these companies significantly benefited from substantial tax reductions. The average income tax rate for many profitable semiconductor companies in 2020 was as low as 7.4%. That's way below standard corporate rates. And SMIC, again, enjoyed outstandingly low interest payment rates on loans, just 1.5% in 2020. Highly favorable government-backed financial terms, far below market rates.
What about other kinds of funding? Equity, venture capital?
Equity financing has also been hugely active and strategically directed. Investments in semiconductor and electronic equipment companies saw an incredible 281.9% increase in investment amount in 2020.
Almost quadrupled in 1 year.
Yeah, and another big jump, 63.5% in 2021. To give you context, this made it the second most invested sector, just behind biotech and healthcare, clear channeling of capital.
Right.
China actively supports the listing of what they call hard and core technology companies, enterprises is focused on key, difficult-to-develop technologies. SMIC's IPO on the STAR market, China's NASDAQ-style exchange, was exceptionally fast, took only a month and a half from application to listing.
Government fast-tracking.
Strong backing, definitely. Moreover, government guidance funds, including the two big funds, the first raised nearly 140 billion RMB, the second aimed for 200 billion. Along with over 700 billion RMB from local government funds, have been strategically deployed across the entire semiconductor supply chain.
So manufacturing equipment, materials, design, everything.
Pretty much, through direct investments, joint ventures, covering all the bases. And commercial banks have been actively encouraged to substantially increase medium to long-term loans to high-tech industries. Loan balances grew significantly.
Okay.
This isn't just organic growth driven by market forces. Let's be very clear. It's a deeply orchestrated, multifaceted national effort to achieve technological self-sufficiency and ultimately leadership.
So we've seen China's comprehensive strategy for indigenous innovation, particularly in semiconductors. An intense coordinated push. What does this undeniable surge mean for the United States? How is the U.S. responding to this intensifying competition?
Well, the U.S. has fundamentally reoriented its strategy regarding China. There's been a definite shift, moving from primarily treating it as an economic partner to viewing it more as a strategic rival.
A big change of perspective.
A huge change. This is clearly evident in legislative actions like the Innovation and Competition Act and a series of increasingly stringent economic sanctions. Key Chinese technology companies like Huawei and SMIC have been added to the entity list by the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Which means restrictions, right?
Significant restrictions on high-tech exchanges in R&D and academia makes it difficult for them to acquire crucial components or technologies. For example, SMIC, as China's largest chip foundry, has been effectively unable to procure the most advanced EUV lithography equipment from ASML in the Netherlands.
The essential tool for cutting-edge chips.
Absolutely crucial. This inability stems directly from U.S. government negotiations with the Dutch government aimed at limiting China's access to advanced chip-making tools. Similarly, Huawei's subsidiary, Hisilicon, the chip designer we mentioned, saw its revenue plummet and fell out of global top rankings because it struggled to get the necessary chips manufactured for its designs.
And there have been other tensions too, haven't there? Investigations.
Yes. Tensions intensified further with investigations into alleged illicit technology transfers. The Department of Justice, for instance, has reported that a significant percentage, they say 80% of economic espionage prosecutions and 60% of trade secret theft cases they pursued involved conduct benefiting the Chinese state.
Those are striking numbers.
They are. Now, these figures represent investigations and prosecutions, but they have certainly fueled political tensions and strained scientific cooperation. There's increased scrutiny and restrictions on collaborative activities between universities and research institutions on both sides.
Okay.
This scrutiny has also contributed to what's been called a brain return phenomenon. Many Chinese scientists and engineers, some who had studied and built careers in the U.S., are choosing to return to China amidst this heightened geopolitical climate.
So how has this spurred the U.S. into action domestically?
Well, this complex situation has, in turn, prompted the U.S. to intensify its own state innovation policy. It's effectively marking a return to a more proactive industrial innovation policy, a significant historical shift.
More government intervention.
More strategic government intervention, yes. Historically, U.S. industrial policy was often seen as limited to defense sectors. But now it encompasses a wide range of non-defense sectors. Alternative energy, advanced manufacturing, healthcare.
A broader scope.
Much broader. The focus is on targeted state intervention at various stages of innovation, going beyond just basic R&D, aiming to accelerate the implementation and dissemination of innovative technologies across the entire economy. This policy is motivated by a trifecta of concerns: national security, the imperative to address climate change, and pressing social issues like strengthening the domestic workforce.
Okay.
The strategy reflects a comprehensive agenda using both direct and indirect support funding, R&D, tax incentives, government procurement to stimulate innovation and build resilient domestic supply chains.
What's fascinating here is, we're seeing a really comprehensive agenda emerge in the U.S. now. Laws like the CIPS and Science Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. These aren't just small adjustments, are they? They seem aimed at fundamentally transforming the economic model, restoring the industrial base, with a strong focus on green transition and breakthrough innovations.
Exactly. These legislative initiatives signal a significant shift from a largely hands-off, market-driven approach to a much more proactive, strategically scientifically guided industrial policy. The CAPS and Science Act, for instance, commits tens of billions of dollars to boost domestic semiconductor manufacturing.
Big money.
Huge money. The goal is clearly to reduce reliance on foreign supply chains and enhance national security in this absolutely critical area. And it's not just about building new chip factories or fabs. It's about fostering an entire ecosystem, R&D, talent, infrastructure.
Right, the whole pipeline.
The whole pipeline. Similarly, the Inflation Reduction Act, while broad, contains substantial provisions designed to accelerate the green transition. It offers significant tax credits and incentives for clean energy production, electric vehicle manufacturing, other sustainable technologies, directly aiming to revitalize the U.S. industrial base with a focus on cutting-edge, environmentally friendly innovations. These acts reflect a clear recognition that in the current global competitive landscape, the state needs to play a more direct and substantial role.
Stepping back in a way.
In a big way, shaping technological leadership and economic resilience. It's a deliberate, multi-pronged effort to transform the economic model, strengthen domestic capabilities, and ensure the U.S. remains at the forefront, especially facing this escalating competition. Hashtag the rise of coopetition.
Okay, so we have intense competition, strategic rivalry, big government investment on both sides. But despite this escalating competition and the protectionist measures we're seeing, there's another crucial, perhaps counterintuitive dynamic at play that's vital to understand. You called it coopetition. Can you explain that? It sounds like a contradiction.
It does sound like one, but it reflects the complex reality.
Yeah.
If we zoom out for a moment, given the increasing knowledge complexity in technological innovation, it's simply unrealistic for any single country to maintain all technological and production capabilities across the board.
Too complex now.
Way too complex. Take the semiconductor industry again. It involves incredibly globally distributed value chains. From intricate chip design in one place, specialized manufacturing equipment from another, advanced materials from yet another, complex packaging, testing, utilization in countless products. It's global.
Sure.
A purely techno-nationalist approach, aiming for complete autonomy, 100% self-sufficiency in everything. Well, it would be highly inefficient and practically unfeasible. It would risk promoting inferior technologies within your own borders because you might lack the global expertise or resources, and it would inevitably lead to redundant, costly investments in innovation that ultimately stifle overall progress.
So trying to do it all alone is actually counterproductive.
In many cutting-edge areas, yes. No single nation, however powerful, can master every facet of these increasingly complex technological ecosystems on its own.
So where does that leave us? How does this play out?
Well, the current global phase is marked by significant ambivalence. It's a real paradox. On one hand, digital technology advances have made efficient data and knowledge transfer easier than ever. Global collaboration is technically feasible at scale. Moreover, major global challenges like climate change, pandemics, population aging, they demand stronger scientific collaboration and coordinated international policies. No single nation can solve these alone.
Right. The big problems need teamwork.
Exactly. Yet, on the other hand, escalating geopolitical tensions and conflicts are driving policies that actively hinder cooperation, making it risky or costly for scientists, businesses, governments to collaborate across borders. This creates a challenging environment where the inherent need for global collaboration clashes directly with national security and economic sovereignty concerns.
Is there data that shows this push and pull, this coopetition?
Yes, the data clearly highlights this complex interplay. While multi-author scientific co-publications, a good indicator of international collaboration, have more than doubled globally in recent years, showing a strong trend towards more teamwork. China's share of these global international collaborations has risen significantly, from under 10% in 2008 to nearly 24% by 2023.
So China's integrating more globally in science.
Very actively. But here's the nuance. When we look at specific bilateral collaborations, China-U.S. co-publications actually declined between 2019 and 2023. Went from about 9.4% down to 7.1%.
Reflecting the tensions.
Exactly. Reflects the political tensions and restrictions we just discussed. However, during the very same period, China-EU collaborations increased from 4.7% to 5.9%.
Interesting divergence.
It suggests the EU's research system remains notably open, maybe pursuing a different path. The U.S. is still a leading partner for the EU, but China is right there too. Even in co-patenting, which often indicates deeper technological ties between companies. While overall U.S. G7 activity declined, its collaborations with China and India globally actually rose to account for 50% of its international co-patents by 2021. China's co-patenting with Germany also shows strong and growing technological ties.
So even with the political headwinds, practical collaboration continues.
It persists and even grows in certain crucial areas. It demonstrates the enduring nature of coopetition. Businesses and scientists often find ways to work together when it makes sense, despite the political climate.
That's fascinating data showing the complexity, and it makes me wonder, what about the human cost of these geopolitical tensions in science? When individual researchers are caught in this shifting landscape.
That's where the story of Dr. Lin Wei really resonates as a powerful illustration. She's a quantum computing scientist. Born in Shanghai, did her postdoctoral research at MIT. Brilliant. For years, she embodied global collaboration, working with international teams, publishing papers with colleagues from Germany, Japan. She understood deeply that the laws of physics don't carry a passport, right?
Yeah.
But around 2022, things started to change dramatically for her. Her American colleagues, once open and collaborative, became more guarded. During coffee breaks, conversations would subtly stop or shift when she approached. Little things, but noticeable.
That must have felt isolating.
Deeply. She found herself gradually and subtly excluded from early-stage project discussions where the real cutting-edge ideas were being formed. At the very same time, her family back in China would message her constantly, saying things like, "Why are you still helping America? Their government sees us as the enemy. It's time to come home."
Caught in the middle.
Completely trapped between two rising walls, caught in a conflict she never wanted. She described staring at a complex quantum equation on her whiteboard one evening and realizing with this profound sadness that the universal symbols and numbers were the only things left that didn't demand her allegiance, that transcended national flags. It highlights how the universal principles she dedicated her life to were, in a very real and painful way, being carved up and claimed by national flags. This human dimension is often overlooked in the geopolitical analyses, but it's a critical consequence of rising techno-nationalism. It forces individual scientists to make incredibly difficult choices and undermines the very spirit of open scientific inquiry that has driven so much human progress. Now, even with China's impressive financial commitment and strategic push for indigenous innovation that we've detailed, it's not all smooth sailing. There are significant internal dilemmas that present substantial challenges. President Xi Jinping himself acknowledged this openly back in May 2018. He stated that the country faced bottlenecks in high-end chips and other core technologies, and he explicitly said that these technologies cannot be demanded, bought, or invited.
Meaning they have to invent them themselves.
Exactly. Underscoring the urgent, fundamental need for true indigenous breakthroughs, recognizing that foreign reliance was a critical vulnerability. The scale of this challenge is further highlighted by China's Ministry of Science and Technology. They identified 35 specific choke points, critical technological areas where China faces significant dependencies on foreign suppliers.
And many are in semiconductors.
Many are, perhaps unsurprisingly, in semiconductor-related areas. Crucial manufacturing equipment like steppers, the machines that print circuits.
Right, the lithography machines?
Yes. And essential electronic design automation, or EDA, tools the software vital for designing sophisticated microchips. These are major dependencies.
So how does the government handle this need for speed versus the risks?
Well, the Chinese government is caught in a difficult balancing act. On one side, the urgent need for rapid development to overcome these bottlenecks and achieve self-sufficiency. On the other, the risk of intensifying external friction, particularly with the U.S. and its allies, and the persistent problem of internal redundant investments.
Wasted resources.
Potentially, yes. This dilemma has led to documented cases of ambitious semiconductor projects ceasing operations or falling into bankruptcy despite massive initial funding. Wuhan Hongsen Semiconductor Manufacturing, for example, a highly ambitious project aimed for advanced foundries, famously collapsed, left huge debts, unfinished buildings.
A high-profile failure.
Very. Even major industry players like Tsinghua Unigroup, which includes significant chip design and memory companies, key national champions, they underwent a complex bankruptcy reorganization in July 2021. These failures highlight significant challenges in resource allocation, project management, maybe a lack of experienced talent in some cases.
Growing pains, perhaps, on a massive scale.
Could be. The National Development and Reform Commission, the NDRC, China's planning agency, publicly criticized companies lacking three elements: experience, technology, and talent for blindly launching local projects. They said it led to low-level, redundant investments.
So top-down goals versus messy bottom-up reality sometimes.
Oh, yeah. It suggests that tension, yeah, between ambitious, strategic goals and sometimes uncoordinated, perhaps inefficient, local initiatives driven by regional incentives.
So despite all that strategic planning and investment, what does this situation mean for the global market, especially for semiconductors? Could these internal dilemmas impact the broader international landscape?
Absolutely, there are significant implications. Despite the government's efforts to discipline these redundant investments and promote principles like centralization and regional concentration, meaning focusing investment in key areas and with capable companies, encouraging mergers.
Trying to impose order.
Right. But the sheer number of newly registered semiconductor companies in China has continued to increase dramatically. From just under 7,000 in 2019, this number surged to over 32,000 in the first 9 months of 2021 alone.
32,000 new companies. That's incredible.
It indicates a persistent entrepreneurial fervor, maybe even a gold rush mentality, fueled by the national priority and financial incentives. Now, while advanced manufacturing equipment exports to China are restricted by other nations, there's a high likelihood that China will continue to invest aggressively in more mature processes, materials, and equipment, the areas less impacted by current export controls.
The older chip technologies.
Exactly. This raises the distinct possibility of an oversupply in mature process semiconductors in the medium term. And this potential oversupply is amplified by the fact that other major players, Japan, the US, Europe, South Korea, Taiwan, are also significantly increasing their support for their own semiconductor industries.
Driven by the same security concerns.
Pretty much. Similar concerns about supply chain resilience and economic security. So we might be heading towards a global scenario where the collective desire for national self-sufficiency leads to market imbalances, particularly in less cutting-edge chip technologies.
Which could create significant market disruptions down the line.
Potentially, yes. Price wars, shifting market shares. It could get messy. Hashtag toward a coopetitive future.
Okay, so as we bring all this together, it seems that narrative we started with, the intellectually lazy one about technological theft, it truly obscures the complex systemic nature of global innovation leadership. It's not just a race for individual breakthroughs. It's this dynamic interplay, almost like a synchronized dance, as you said.
Precisely. Our analysis today highlights that both competitive and collaborative forces are profoundly shaping international relationships in science and technology. You can't ignore either side. It's simply unrealistic for any single country to maintain all technological and production capabilities in this increasingly complex world. Think about AI, quantum computing, advanced materials. They demand extensive knowledge integration that transcends national boundaries and individual research labs.
Needs diverse expertise.
Absolutely. This is where coopetitive technological sovereignty becomes such a crucial framework for navigating the future. It's a nuanced approach. States must compete fiercely for technological leadership, pushing their own capabilities to the limit, while simultaneously, deliberately, and in an informed way, collaborating with other countries to generate essential critical technologies by leveraging complementary knowledge and expertise.
So compete and cooperate.
At the same time, it's about being as open as possible, as closed as necessary, as the European Union puts it in its international research cooperation strategy. This means developing stronger domestic technological capabilities, ensuring resilience and security, but not at the expense of cutting off valuable international collaboration that is absolutely essential for progress in many fields.
And why is finding this balance so important?
Well, the larger context here is that major global challenges, climate change, pandemics, population aging, digital transformation, are simply too vast and complex for any single nation to tackle alone. It's impossible. The rapid, collaborative international development of COVID-19 vaccines is a prime example.
Yeah, that was a global effort.
Absolutely. That wasn't a solo national effort. It was a global sprint involving scientists, companies, governments from incredibly diverse backgrounds sharing knowledge and resources at an unprecedented pace. It showed what's possible. By strategically managing these coopetitive relationships, we can align shared objectives for humanity's biggest problems with national interests. This could potentially reduce the global security risks that arise from progressive decoupling and isolationist policies.
Finding common ground, even amidst rivalry.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to collaborate on what must be solved together, even while national competition rages on in other perhaps more zero-sum areas. This is the delicate balance that will define innovation leadership and global stability in the coming decades.
So we've taken quite a deep dive today into the nuanced world of global innovation. A lot to unpack. We moved past the simple narratives of theft, to explore China's impressive indigenous innovation, the systemic advantages that truly define competition for leadership, and the critical role of coopetition in our interconnected world.
Yeah, what we've seen is that the future of technological leadership isn't just about who builds the fastest chip or files the most patents. That's part of it, but not the whole story. It's increasingly about who can master the delicate art of coopetition, leveraging shared knowledge for humanity's biggest challenges, even as national interests diverge and compete fiercely.
This deep dive has certainly shown us that innovation is a truly global, messy, and interconnected process. The lines between competition and collaboration are constantly shifting, constantly redrawing themselves, and fundamentally shaping the world we live in.